Hello again. I'm Braddock Supervisor John Cook. Welcome back to Braddock Neighborhood News, the program I am using to provide you with information on issues facing our community and ideas on how we can strengthen our neighborhoods. This month, I'm pleased to have with us Grace Lynch from the Division of Adult and Aging Services and Patricia Rohrer from the Long-Term Care Coordinating Council. Over the course of the summer, Fairfax County held several community forums addressing and inquiring about the various issues and concerns of our older adult population. The Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, together with the Fairfax Area Agency on Aging, is working to continue progress toward creating a more livable community for older residents. Grace, Patricia, thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate you taking some time with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Let's talk a little bit about first just kind of who you are, what your agencies do. Grace, you're with the Adult and Aging Services Division of
the Department of Family Services.
Which is a whole lot to say.
Yes, it is.
But you do a lot of important work. Tell us about it.
Yes. Well, the work of our division is really vast. We have one unit which is Adult Services, which is also part of Adult Protective Services, and they provide direct services to older adults. And there's all kinds of different services involved there. But essentially it all begins with a social worker who goes out and does an assessment and a case plan. Another part of our agency is the Fairfax Area Agency on Aging. This part of the agency does much more of the community planning piece. It also tests new programs. And this is the part of the agency that has been more involved with the Fairfax 50+ planning.
Okay. And Patricia, the Long-Term Care Coordinating Council is a librarian's dream for alliteration, I think, but it's a long title, but it's an important committee and it's got some citizen involvement and some involvement from our Human Services staff. And tell us about it.
Yes, the Long-Term Care Coordinating Council really is entirely a citizen body supported by 2 staff, and we have 55 members at the present time. And these are people from businesses, nonprofits, hospitals, healthcare, universities, etc., and they all come together and they're all concerned about long-term care. This will be older adults and adults with disabilities, and in a collaborative way try to address unmet needs in the community. And the council was chartered by the Board of Supervisors back in 2001, so it's been in existence for about 10 years. And then in addition to providing staff support to the council, I work for what's called the Long-Term Care Program Development Unit in the Health Department, and here's where most of my time is spent out in the community working with community groups, helping them really figure out how to start programs, develop programs, expand programs that will serve older adults. Things like neighbors helping neighbors, maybe in a homeowners association. Houses of worship that wish to serve their older adults and maybe develop older adult ministries and this type of thing. So.
And both of you have been very involved in what we call our 50+ plan in the county. And, you know, interestingly, even that term 50+, which is constantly thought about because nobody really knows what, do we say older, do we say something else, what does that mean, where's the cutoff? And in some ways, we're trying not to draw firm lines because we're talking about people in a continuum of their life, but trying to focus on what we would traditionally or used to call senior citizens or older adults and folks who we recognize have similar interests and challenges.
That's right.
But talk a little bit about that sort of that idea of 50 as a marker. I'm thinking, as of this year, I decided that number should be higher. I might have a personal interest in that.
Well, everybody seems to do that. When they turn 50, they're thinking, why? 50 is not old.
It's the new 30 because 70 is the new 50 or something.
But the way we're looking at this isn't that you have to decide when old is old. In fact, there's quite a bit of gerontological theory about when do people actually become old. Well, you're kind of as young as you feel, and that seems to be what people are understanding. I know now they're talking about how 50 is or 40. Well, 50 is the new 40, 60 is the new 50, that kind of thing. And I think that what that really says is people are feeling as young, or they're as young as they feel. Now, we use 50 quite a bit in our promotions for particular kinds of programs. And the reason we do isn't because that's when you become old, and that's when the county thinks you become old, but it's because when you start concerning yourself with issues of later life, even if it's, and specifically if it's for your parents or for other loved ones in your family. You're no longer kind of just looking at the younger generation. You're concerned about the older generation as well, and it's becoming part of your life to do that. So whether you're an older person or you're a person who's caring in some way for an older person, that's kind of when it starts, when you're in your early 50s.
And you know, that's a good point, because to the extent that somebody under 50 has their clicker in their hand thinking this show isn't for me, it may very well be, because we are the sandwich generation, right? So you're looking at, you have kids, but you also have parents and other family members who are older, and so these issues may apply to them, and therefore to you as a family member who cares about that. Or maybe you're somebody who looks ahead a little bit and says, you know, I need to be thinking about. And that's sort of part of what the Long-Term Care Coordinating Council does, because you're looking at folks that may have some significant care needs, but also the providers, who are often the children of the older adults.
Right, the caregivers. As the sandwich generation, which you mentioned. The council is concerning itself with caregivers, with older people, with even intergenerational. In some cases, we're looking at how we can bring younger people in to make them more aware of the wisdom of older people, or ways that they can also participate in caring for them. So yeah, it concerns itself not only with 50, but those very old.
And one of the things that we've noticed is that here in Fairfax County, a number of people who, you know, moved here 30, 40 years ago, who raised their families here, they put a lot of time and sweat equity into the county, they built what is Fairfax County today, and when they turned whatever age it is, 55, 60, 65, 70, they decide to stay right here, because I helped build this county, I like what I built, I want to stay. So we're not going to Florida or Arizona, we're staying here in Fairfax, and that's a good thing. We're really happy about that, but what that also means is, hey, wait a minute, we're not a county just of families in their 40s anymore. Now we have to look at, if you are older, if you are facing medical issues or other things, what are your needs, challenges, and wants? As you said, Patricia, there's a lot of folks well into their 60s, 70s, and beyond who contribute an awful lot to the community and want to do that.
Yes, there's a real interest as people begin to age, the baby boomers, and how they can give back, how they can reinvent themselves. You know, what's there for me to contribute back, the lifelong experiences I've had in my career, how can I give that back to the community? And in addition to thinking about when they become in need of services, how are they going to have this available for themselves?
And one of the areas where this starts is in housing, because now instead of thinking in terms of, well, when somebody hits retirement age, they're going to move away, they want to stay, maybe in their home, maybe someplace else in the county. And Grace, talk a little bit about what does that mean, because we talk about universal design and all these terms, but what does it mean to have a county where a lot of people want to stay here and live from a housing perspective, you know, when they're older?
Well, from a housing perspective, well, one thing we know to begin with is that most people want to stay in their own home. I know AARP has been doing surveys on this for, at least 20 years, and it's consistent. People want to stay where they are. Now, of course, sometimes that's not always possible, but that's what people want. And so the first thing you have to do is look at your own house. Is it still serviceable for an older person who may run into some kind of disability as they age, or who may need some help in the home, who may need some help taking a bath, that kind of thing. I mean, there are ways that homes can be designed to make caring for an older adult, or even self-care, so much easier. Now, one of the big things we have in Fairfax County, of course, is stairs. And stairs are really quite problematic, and there's not a lot you can do to get around that, except for, you know, getting one of those devices that will bring you up the stairs, one of the stair lifts. But there are ways to design first floor bathrooms, for instance, and first floor kitchens to be more accommodating for people who may have a disability. The term, and I think you just mentioned it, universal design, is something that I know we have been promoting quite a bit throughout Fairfax County. What does that mean in terms of making your kitchen more adaptable, making your bathroom more adaptable, making the front entrance more adaptable? We've done a number of programs throughout the county, training programs. We even, a couple of years ago, had a countywide event called Reinventing Your Home, where we brought in providers, service providers, in a trade show fashion, but we also had people talking about how to make this happen. You know, how to retrofit your house as you're doing necessary repairs. That's a really good time. If you have to put in a new bathroom, for instance, and a lot of times older people do because their houses have been aging with them. So after about 20 or 25 years in a home, they might be thinking of putting in a new bathroom. Well, what should you really be looking at? In terms of the fixtures for that bathroom.
And then in addition to having the home accessible, there's the need for services in order to stay in your home.
Right, and and Patricia, I'm glad you brought that up because we're thinking about more options. It's not just, okay, I live here and now I need to go to the doctor. I need to go to my senior center. Sometimes it's people coming to you. Right. And that's a lot of what the council looks at.
Well, in particular, we've been spending a lot of time trying to develop aging in place, neighbor helping neighbor villages, they're called. And this is where people in a neighborhood, primarily between the ages of 65 and 75, will come together and develop a service structure in their neighborhood so that they can stay in their home. And this will mean, for example, they'll come up with a list of needs. Well, what do we need? We might need our lawns cut when we can't cut them anymore. We might need home health services. We might need a ride to the doctor, etc. And then what they do is they'll develop volunteer pools, people within their neighborhood who are willing to do some of these services for each other. And in addition to that, they may also vet businesses or service providers and come up with a preferred list for the neighbors or the association that they might set up. And so in this way, they're enabling each other to stay in their own homes. And they're also developing this sense of volunteerism. They're determining for themselves what they want and how they want it delivered to them. So there's a lot of pluses with these little models. And we have about 9 of them in the county right now, including Braddock District Council now has set up an Aging in Place Committee, and they're looking to support some folks in the district to set these up. In fact, there are 2 that I'm aware of now that are beginning to organize in the district.
Yeah, it's a great concept because we find that somebody might have a challenge in one area of their life, but they're still able to do a lot of things in another area and can even help someone else in another area. Right. Maybe it's somebody who says, I can't cook anymore, but I can help you with simple home repairs. And somebody else who says, I really need somebody to come in and help me with simple home repairs because I can't really do them, but boy, I can still cook dinner. Well, there's an obvious trade-off.
Right. Or even fix your computer. I mean, there's all kinds of skills people are trading.
And helping with kids and all sorts of things. And some of these get kind of formal, the Beacon Hill Project, right, with a barter system and points and all this. And others are just kind of that simple concept of, hey, get to know your neighbor, other people in the community, and how do you help each other out. And I do hope that more communities will sort of grab onto this idea of how do we stay together as a community and help each other. And that's in many ways the best form of help, right? You need an outside caregiver for more detailed, more medical type work, but on the simple stuff, help ourselves.
It creates community. That's the beauty of it. Community, volunteerism, and a sense of security because people feel that, well, there's a group of people in my neighborhood that want to help me when I need it. Or there's a number I can call to get a vetted provider, and I don't have to feel like I have to beg someone or ask my daughter or something of this nature. So,
and Grace, isn't that why people, one reason why people want to stay in their homes, right? Because it's that community that they've lived in for 20, 30, 40 years, and they say, boy, if there's a way to stay, and I like walking down the street that I know, and I like doing this, and that's part of this village concept,
I think what's happening is as people retire, You know how we are in Fairfax County, we're very job oriented and we're always running. But as you retire, you don't have to, you're not doing that commute to the job and you're not as job centered, obviously. So you're looking for something else, and this is what we're seeing among a lot of retired people, because one of the things we do in the area agency is we have a huge volunteer network. And we do the Meals on Wheels programs, that kind of thing. But we're finding that retired people are looking for, possibly for the first time they've even had time, ways to be part of community, ways to give back to community. So it's a really, really good thing. Other people, newly retired people, are looking at ways to develop their lives in other ways. For instance, the learning programs in Fairfax County have been really so successful, such as the George Mason program and the Northern Virginia Community College program. And you think, well, this is people who are looking for learning, but what happens is when you get involved in one of the learning programs or one of our sports programs or our senior centers, the people you're involved with eventually become your support network. And that's a really good thing, and that's one of the really nice things about Fairfax County, is that we have such a variety of activities that people can get involved in, particularly older people, and those activities themselves lend to support, kind of more informal support, but still very significant support.
And that helps in a number of ways, Patricia, even with more specialized services, medical care and that kind of thing, to have that support network with you. Talk a little bit about some of the things the council does looking at services and in-home services and connecting people to those more formal things.
Right. Well, there's the council tries to stay current on what's going on in the political and other world, and so with some of the changes in health care, there's been a real concern about the coordination between medical care and social services, because often they function in separate silos, so that when someone went to the hospital, they'd see the social worker to take care of their meals and their transportation, they'd see the doctors and the nurses for their medical. But more and more, these two entities need to be collaborating, because we live in a holistic world. Our lives are not compartmentalized like this. And then also what's happening is people go from specialist to specialist and they don't have the coordination of care, meaning that the one specialist maybe didn't talk to the other. So it's falling on the individual themselves and on their caregiver to make all these connections. So the council has a committee called the Coordination of Medical and Social Services Committee, which is trying to address this in a number of ways. They're working with the two hospital systems that we have, the Reston Hospital and Inova, and we have physicians and an assistant administrator and the head of the case management services of these institutions coming together on these committees and talking about how can we educate our doctors better about what exists in the community when they're around older adults or adults with disabilities. When they go home, what's going to happen in the community? How are they going to be assured they get their medication? How are they going to be assured they get to the doctor? And so through the influence of this council and committee, they have built these training programs for their doctors and their social workers and also their physicians in training that are coming through. And so this is really exciting to hear at our local level from these folks that the difference it's making and the aha moments and the connections. And then in addition to that, they came up with they vetted what's called a personal health record, which is where an individual has all of their medical issues, their medications, the doctors they see, their emergency contacts, etc., food preferences, everything kind of in one little, piece of, it's not a paper, but
it's going to be electronic now, right?
Yeah, well, so. The thing is, they were going to promote the electronic one as well, and we do, but a number of people, older people don't
like
use the
paper,
computer, so we give them the paper.
Right.
And so now we're the committee's promoting this. So that's a little bit of some of the more health-related initiatives that they're working on.
And those are important. If you're the child of that older adult, you're worried about is mom taking her medicine every day, especially you start to have memory issues. And when you say, well, gee, maybe you have to live in a nursing home to make sure you get your medicine, and somebody else says, no, I want to live in my home. And then you say, well, gee, if the real issue is simply taking your medicine, there must be a different way. Right. And that's part of what you guys are trying to work with people on, is there are ways to allow people to stay at home, allow them to live in the community, be in the community, be with other people, and get the care they need.
Mm-hmm. Another big issue is dementia and Alzheimer's. And so the council has another committee, subcommittee really, of, again, professionals, people from the Alzheimer's Association, the Alzheimer's Adult Day Center, etc., looking at ways, there again, some of that's education. They came up with a prescription style pad that they have disseminated to physicians and physical therapists and a lot of the medical community that has resources on there for people who have dementia and for their caregivers, because oftentimes they'll go to the doctor and the doctor will talk about this in medical terms and the medicine they need and so forth, but not talk about, well, here's a support group you can go to, and here's an organization that gives you information about how to manage this at home, or here you can have a caregiver support group for those that are just beginning to have dementia. I mean, there's all ranges of supports out there. So
and that's really good.
There's multiple projects they do, but there's a few examples.
Yeah, and that's a good point that there's not this bright line between what is medicine and what is all the other things somebody else needs. And
Right.
a doctor can give you a diagnosis and maybe give you a prescription, but when it comes to be something like, how do you remember to take your medicine? Well, is that medical or social services? And
Well,
we
this
don't
is
want
where
to.
this is where social work comes in
Yep.
and case management comes in. It's really when a social worker is brought into a case, whether you're paying for a care manager or whether it's one of our social workers from Fairfax County, that's exactly what they look at. They start out by doing an assessment, and it's not just a medical assessment. They'll have the diagnosis, but that's kind of where you begin. That's not where you end. You keep moving until you do a full functional assessment, and then you do a family assessment, and then you do a depression inventory. So there's a lot of different kinds of information the social worker will put together and then do the analysis. What do we need to do to keep this person where they are functioning as well as they can? A good place to start, let me just say this, in the county is to call us at 703-324-7948. This is the one telephone number that gets you, when you call it, you're talking to a social worker. And but you can call about anything. You can call about, where's the closest senior center, or, how do I get a ride from here to there, that kind of thing. Or you can talk about something quite a little bit more complicated, a concern you have about yourself, your spouse, or perhaps you're calling about your parents. Just certain behaviors you're seeing that you're a little worried about, and you want to talk about what you can do, or whether a social worker needs to come in. I mean, we can send out a social worker from the county, or depending on eligibility, we have a service called ElderLinks, which is very, very reasonable in terms of price. But for people who don't qualify for county services, a social worker can still come out and do an assessment and help people put together what kind of program, what kind of care plan works best for them.
I think that is a good point, that people might feel overwhelmed and how do I get information? We do. Mm-hmm. We have the information, we have the services, and we have people that can help you navigate that. And There's a few simple places to start. Grace, you've got a copy of your Golden Gazette with you.
Oh,
Maybe
yeah.
you want to show that to folks, and so people
happy
get an idea.
to.
You ought to be reading this, right?
Yes,
when it comes out, this
yes.
has information.
We are in our 36th year with the Golden Gazette. And we do a lot else in communication. We have a web page, we have a Facebook page, we have all kinds of electronic stuff, but this seems to be the crowd favorite year after year. And it's about 24 pages. And what we cover is county news that's of interest to older adults and caregivers. I think this is September, so we actually covered the forums. And then the other issue is, the learning opportunities in the county. So each issue usually has a Medicare story as well, because so much change has been going on in Medicare. We also have a lot of consumer issues that we cover. You'll also find activities for older adults, what's going on at the senior centers, that kind of thing. So it's really, and it's free, and it's a monthly. All you have to do is call our office, and we'll put you on the subscription.
And it's a way people can follow and get up to speed of what's going on.
Exactly.
One of the issues we haven't talked about, I think I mentioned it earlier, but that's a big issue that you guys work with, is transportation. Yes. Whether it's getting people to and from the doctor, or to and from a senior center or elsewhere. And that's been a subject of the forums that we've been helping. Patricia, talk a little bit about what transportation means to older adults and the issues that we have to look at.
Well, what I hear in the community is that transportation is the #1 concern for people as they get older. one of the concerns is in many of the neighborhoods there's not bus service or not adequate bus service, so the buses are not running in the middle of the day when they might wish to use them. We're more of a commuter community where we get ourselves to work and back home. So an increase in options of public transportation is one thing that folks are concerned about. Also, just when they can't drive anymore, just getting to some social activity or getting to the doctor. And so what's happening actually is very exciting. There's a number of community-based groups that are developing these volunteer driver programs where people, they're vetted, but they volunteer. They want to drive someone in their car to a medical appointment or to the grocery store. And so there's really a need for a lot more of that. Included in transportation is not only just riding in a vehicle, but it's also bus shelters, bus stops where they can stand and wait or sit and wait and be protected from the weather. So there's been some concerns raised about that at some of the forums.
Right.
So
and that's really it's a great way for people to be involved if they want to volunteer, because there's a growing need for the drivers. And it's also an area where what we really need is some brain power. We need people to be involved and continue to be involved in this, in thinking about these options. And we could talk a lot longer about this, but we're out of time. Oh. And I want to thank Grace Lynch and Patricia Rohrer for joining us today and talking about the 50-plus community forums and all the exciting things going on for older adults in Fairfax County. Both of these dedicated public servants are very valuable resources for the citizens in Fairfax County. I hope you've enjoyed this segment of Braddock Neighborhood News. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, comments, or other needs, please contact my office at 703-425-9300 or email braddock@fairfaxcounty.gov. Tune in next month for another edition, and please remember to look for ways to volunteer. Your community needs you.